Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Vandermause. I am a retired Green Bay Community Church staff member. Part of my role here was to allow people a platform to tell their stories, specifically about how God is working in their lives. Fortunately for me, I still get to do that on occasion in retirement. And today is a special day. I'm privileged to have as my guests Jerry and Ramona Bader, who have what I think is a great story to tell. Jerry, Ramona, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Mike.
Now, I want to put this a little bit in context. So let's first talk about what is your role right now? How would you describe it? And I'll start with you, Jerry.
So, title-wise, I am lead pastor at Samaritan's Heart Mission Church, and that title means a lot of different things in different churches. But generally, I pastor a church that Green Bay Community Church helped launch 5 years ago with financial support from me and ultimately allowing us to have a church building. So we are not what I call a traditional Sunday morning church, but we do have services on Sunday morning. We are indeed a mission. We're a mission outpost on the west side of Green Bay, the near west side. And I do just about whatever is asked of me, Mike. That's my job description. If someone needs food, if someone needs a ride somewhere, I manage to find the time to do that. If not, we find someone else who can. But the role is overseeing a ministry that is a mission outreach, serving the unhoused, those returning from incarceration, and those in recovery from addiction.
And then Ramona, tell me a little bit about your role in all of this.
Well, I guess you could say I'm support. I'm the administrator, so I just take care of all the whatever has to be done within the building and just support all the different things that we do. So
I'll amend that. She keeps everything from collapsing while I'm doing all that other stuff. She keeps, as they say, she keeps the trains running on time on steroids.
That's an important role, no doubt. Jerry, I want to go back to September of 2016 because I know you've referred to it as your rebirth day. Tell me what life-changing event happened 8 years ago.
So, and it really was life-changing. So, I was a successful radio talk show host. I thought I was going to be doing that for the rest of my life. And I did, for my work life. And there was so much sinning going on off mic that people just had no clue. And that led to a very difficult period in our lives in 2016. And we had just begun attending another church, and my sinning caught up with me, and it led to some very difficult things in our lives. And we had just started attending. It was Pastor Terry Martell, and we didn't know Terry at all. I mean, we only attended a few times. We just got to talk to this guy. And the bottom line was I hadn't accepted God's forgiveness for all my sinning while others around me had forgiven me. Terry gave me a really good scolding on that. And then we left that meeting and we're talking, I get what Terry's saying. And we got behind at a stoplight. I remembered a white Lincoln Continental with the license plates 4GV 4GT. I had no idea what it meant. And I look at her. She goes, forgive and forget. And I call up my text from Jesus that you're forgiven, knock it off. I forgave you, let's move on. And I never looked back. And I accepted Christ. And 2 years later, called the ministry. And 2019, Green Bay Community Church stepped in and made that happen.
Ramona, as you were observing Jerry's transformation, what did you see?
Just practically a complete turnaround, really, from the way he had been before. Some things I wasn't aware of. We had been very active in the church and didn't realize that he was faking it. And so that it's just been an amazing change, and it's been, God does wonderful things. He's just amazing.
She doesn't want to say the first two things that went away were the cussing and the lying. Boom, they were gone.
So you talked about 2019 then, and being called to ministry. And it started out one way, and God kind of directed you maybe on a different path down the road. Explain a little bit about how that all transpired.
Yeah, at the very least, he dramatically broadened the mission. And we have a saying, don't ask God to bless what you're doing, do what God is blessing. In the first couple of years, we really asked him, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're sure this is what you want us to do. And that was, conversations with Pastor Troy here and other people, that we would have the opportunity to serve the neighborhoods around that building at 520 South Oakland. And we do continue to do that. And we do continue to have a call to serve those families. What we didn't understand is one of the greatest challenges in that neighborhood. It is one of the worst methamphetamine areas in the city of Green Bay. So, I think we heard the mission correctly to a degree. And yeah, we're blessed recently on Sunday mornings. We're getting families with small children, but those in recovery, those again who are returning from incarceration, and right now the focus is for this particular period of time is on the homeless. And what we see is that God has called us for those three areas. And in terms of recovery, actually on January 31st in my message, or December 31st on my message, I said a church in recovery, a recovery church, that we're all in recovery, going all the way back to Adam and Eve. So there is that. That's a huge part of what we're doing, but we are seeing more and more homeless. We are seeing more homeless in Seymour Park, adjacent to the church, and God has really put it on our heart to have a concerted effort to help the homeless, and that has led to a program I'm sure we'll be talking about, that to serve the homeless in a very specific way in the next 6 months. But so, it's not the way we thought it was. But like I said, it's so easy when you plant a corn seed, you expect corn. When you plant a seed, you can see God does the planting. He gets to dictate what's going to come out of the ground.
Ramona, as you've watched this, morph into, something maybe different than you thought it would be, like, do you see the hand of God all along, even through maybe the roller coaster ride it might have been?
We do. I do, because the way that things happen, we start doing something, and if it doesn't go quite the way we think it's going to go, it's like, well, but most of the times it's after we see it and it's like, oh, that's what God was doing, because we've done things, and those actually have prepared us for what we're doing now. But when we get it right, he just blesses it enormously. There's when we started this, I know we'll be talking more about warming at the heart. It's like, how are we going to do this? Mm-hmm. We Samaritan's Heart can't do it alone. There's just no way we can do it, and just everything that has come together for that, and we know there's other things that we're still waiting for, but we know he's going to provide them in the next couple of weeks.
I want to jump in quick on that. I think there are times where we think we've heard God wrong. You said when we don't get it right. I'm not so sure we didn't get it right in terms of what God was calling us to do, but what his purpose was. Is, a lot of times it's just making connections with other people. So, that's why, and there was an outreach effort for medical care that we thought for sure God was calling us to do, and it didn't really materialize. The need wasn't there in the way that we thought it was, and we worked on that for 3 years. But there are connections and other things that came out of that God can use going forward.
I want to pull a quote, Jerry. I think it was from maybe a social media post of yours, but let me just read it, and then I want you to expound on it maybe a little bit. It said, if your efforts to be used by God to bring others to him don't produce the earthly results you desire, remember that you have already succeeded just by saying yes to God's will for your life.
That's exactly right. And here's the biblical example that I use on that. Acts 17, Paul's sermon on Mars Hill. And it is seen as the template of how to evangelize because he related to the Greeks there. He didn't make fun of their gods. He said, hey, I see all these statues to gods, and you have this one to the unknown God who creates everything. That's my God. That's the one I'm trying to tell you about. And he was very relatable, and it's seen as this perfect example. And remember, Paul was on the run. Okay, he'd been run out of the last location. I think it's Berea, but he was basically cooling his heels until his friends picked him up. He's like, oh, but wait, I can do what I do. I can do what God called me to do. And it's seen as such a successful evangelism effort. And then I joke, and we can read all about it in his letter to the Athenians. Oh no, wait, we can't, because there is no letter to the Athenians, because apparently no church formed in Athens as the result of that. But he listened to God and did what God called him to do, being the Energizer Bunny of evangelizing. And whatever the earthly results look like, God knows all he wanted you to do is say yes.
That's profound, because so often we as humans, we see success
Numbers.
a certain way.
Numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it might be completely the opposite of that.
Right.
That is profound. I want to dive into a little bit about the details of your ministry, but before I do that, let me just ask you a general question, and this will be for you both, but what motivates you when you get up in the morning?
Wow, I just shared this at a Bible study last night. We are going through a book called Living Life Backward. It's a study of Ecclesiastes. And I said, you know what? I feel that I wasted the first 55 years of my life. I know I didn't, based on, God's got a plan. And when I was 8 years old, I thought I was going to be a Catholic priest. I got a Catholic Bible for Christmas that year. And then life became very hard. I was emotionally abused at home. I was bullied at school, and God was gone. And Mike, what I say just about every Sunday morning, I look around before I'm going to preach. I can't believe I get to do this. I cannot believe God called me to do this. I set my alarm for 4:30 in the morning. Recently, God's been waking me up at 4. Apparently 4:30 even isn't early enough for God. And I jump into my meditation. What is God going to show me in his word that's going to guide me through the day where I can love people like Jesus loved them? And the greatest challenge, particularly among the unhoused, those in recovery, both, is you try loving them the way Jesus did with deeds as well as words. Those can't be real. You're going to want people do nice things for me because they're going to want something from me. And my challenge every day is, today's the day they're going to realize, no, we just want you and Jesus to get together. I don't want anything in return. And the opportunity to do that, Mike, absolutely, that's what gets me out of bed a half an hour before the alarm goes off.
How about for you, Ramona?
Oh, well, I don't get up that early. But it really is what does God have for today? What am I doing today, Lord, that you want me to do? So I have my plan, but you have to hold them loosely. You have to hold them really loosely because you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes we go in a completely different direction that we thought we were going to go for that day. Mm-hmm. But it's just seeing others come to the Lord and what we can do, how we can help them help themselves. I think is the focus for me anyway, is to help them help themselves. We can't do everything for them. What I've been learning lately is we can only do as much as they are willing to do for themselves. Mm-hmm. That brings it there. So
you look back on your journey, and obviously you see God's handprints along the way. Let's just take a couple of examples. So in 2021, you were able to acquire the church, which formerly was Crossroads, I believe. Now, it still came with a mortgage that you took on, and yet, I in the last year or two, I don't remember the exact time frame on that, but the mortgage is paid off.
Yep.
Right.
how do you what do you attribute that to?
God.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Absolutely.
you were going to say, well, it is a great question. Yeah. So it was September 1st, 2021 that we were blessed that the Green Bay Community Church said, here's a building valued at $200,000. You just take over the note and it's yours. We're handing this to you. And we were blessed with several large donations that ultimately August 2023, yeah, so just shy of 2 years, we were able to pay that off. And that, of course, is a game changer for a small ministry. Quite frankly, the people that we serve, we seek their time and we seek their talent because there just ain't no treasure. And so God has continued to keep our noses above water, and a huge part of that is that blessing.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was were you shocked when in 2021 when the church was
Completely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember telling her, it's like, because honestly, I came to Green Bay Community Church that day to meet with Pastor Troy and say, look, because they had offered to sell. It's like, we prayed and we saw counsel and we prayed. It's not going to happen. And I came here to tell him that. He was like, it's okay, we don't want to sell it to you anymore. And I'm like, huh? And shocked. Yeah, we were just, and I thought, okay, yeah, well, we'll pray on that. We didn't pray on that very long. And God makes it so evident when he's creating a way. And that's, so first was shock, and it's like, oh, that's so God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was our prayer when it was first, to buy the building is, God, show us how. How does this happen? And we just didn't see how.
We
it was
thought
happening.
maybe he was calling us to leave that area. It's because if we didn't acquire the building, we were going to lose the little space that we had. And it's like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe. And actually, this just popped up. So I was talking with the neighborhood association president at that time. And I'd stopped at her house, and I really had to get back to the office. And this was when we were deciding, what do we do? And she said, hey, you say hi to Ramona, and you tell her thanks for sticking. Thanks that you didn't leave me, that you weren't just here for a few months and you're going. And on the walk back, I said, all right, got it. Now just tell us how it works.
Yeah.
And he continues to work. A small example, you mentioned the parking lot that, it was kind of a disaster area, needed to be upgraded, and somehow...
Small, but not small. So that was a $15,000 single donation of someone who was even sicker of seeing that parking lot than we were. But here's something we did not anticipate from that is how it changed the outlook of those who have joined our church family. There's a freshness, a newness. It was at some point the city may have said something. It was in such horrible shape, and Mike, there was no path to that. We were looking at affordable fixes for the next winter, and God puts it on someone's heart who has the wherewithal to do that and say, do that. And it's a small thing in a big church. In a small church, $15,000, there was just no time in the immediate future that we were going to be able to do that. So those are the markers that we were talking about earlier. If God keeps blessing it, keep doing it. And he just keeps blessing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell me just a little bit about Sunday mornings, because you gather Sunday mornings, and that has grown.
So we started on September 11th, 2022 on Sunday mornings. We'd been doing Wednesday evenings, which we continued to for a couple of years. And God said, go. Even our friends were like, well, you can't rush these things. I felt it was time to go. The first Sunday we had guests and so on. So there were maybe 15 people, something like that. And there were weeks it was 6, it was 8. And most recently it's anywhere from 30-ish to low 40s, and depending on the week. And to me, one of the greatest blessings, we have a young lady who's been with us. She GT. She a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because she says something just so powerful.
She started on Wednesdays.
She started on Wednesdays, but even then referring to Sunday, she goes, I was here when there were 6, 8, and you preached the same way then as you do for 40. And why that just, it blesses me so greatly is because it's not me, it's the Spirit. That I am thankful that I let the Spirit do what the Spirit does when there were half a dozen people there. 40, if God, I remember, boy, God, if you ever give us 30, that'd be great, man. That'll be awesome. I don't know what number He has in store. It's not important to me. It's going back to, if I say yes to God, I've succeeded.
So, Ramona, for you, Sunday mornings, what do you see and feel and experience?
Oh my gosh. Well, so we do breakfast, and we do breakfast before. So we have a 9 o'clock service. So we are there at 7:30. We have others that will do breakfast also. So it's doing breakfast. It's just doing actually everything. We are getting more and more people that want to do things, that want to be part of it. And so that's glorious when they do that, and they are just growing in that. But otherwise, it's just making sure that everything is ready. We're kind of the tech people, we're the food people, we're the music, we just do it all right now, and we have people joining us, and we're looking to have even more. I've got a rotation. We have people that will come up and do the announcements and stuff like that, and just be part of the worship. We call anybody who's involved with the service the worship team. So we have a music team, but we have a worship team, and that's everybody.
And that's you can share that. The music team is just in the past few months.
Yes, music team just started. We just started doing that. We started out once a month, doing live music. Otherwise, we did recorded music, and so we're doing that, and we're growing on that. We're getting to know each other. It's building a team, and with that, you have to know each other and work that out. So we're up. We're looking at 2 Sundays a month now, and we'll keep going at that as we get to know each other and can grow in that. So we enjoy that.
Jerry, you mentioned at the beginning of this year, you kind of, I don't know, would you call it well, it's another God moment, I guess, kind of a direction from the Holy Spirit. Tell me a little bit about how that came about, and then what has resulted from that.
Yeah, so it's there were a couple of things I think that came together on that. We are blessed. A gentleman who attended Crossroads when it was there. Jose was actually in leadership there, and he made his way to us from a summer event last summer, a picnic, and joined us. And he is now on our lead team, and that ministry was a recovery ministry, and Jose was wondering. So he had been between churches, and he came back, and he was wondering, well, how long is God going to want me here? And then I said, hey, I'm feeling from the Holy Spirit that we need to offer something. We were, Mike, in a sense, a recovery church. Many people in recovery had already found us, but we were still in that place that some churches unintentionally get, where we're a church, but we need something for the recovery people. And that's what God put on my heart, is we're all in recovery. And I've started sharing this more openly. I've shared it from the pulpit many times. I've shared it in other public venues. I would say I had a weight problem. I ate too much. I'm a food addict. Okay. Got on a scale today. I'm 150 pounds. 10 years ago, it was 230 something. And I had 2 criteria for stopping eating. The food is gone, or my body couldn't take any more in. That's an addiction. And Mike, admitting that no, I'm not a compulsive eater. I'm not this. I'm an addict. My substance is food. Unlike heroin or meth, we need food. So that makes it even more complicated. But recognizing that I have a legitimate addiction, that was the Holy Spirit moment that led to that change.
So now the ministry to those recovering, what does that look like?
So we have, I think I mentioned earlier, Kathy O'Reilly, our recovery ministries coordinator, she leads a Thursday meeting. She has her own nonprofit called Recovery Hub, and it's housed in the church building, and it's really a partnership with Samaritan's Heart. And Kathy is, as I mentioned, she leads our own Thursday recovery meeting. When we interface with people, and here's what happens, Mike, is someone in recovery suggests someone else. This church is not going to judge you. If you slip, you're okay. You will come here, you will be unconditionally loved. Before this past year, so then I and Ramona did what we could do. Now it's Kathy. That's her ministry within that church. I am certainly, as lead pastor, I'm part of that, of course, as Ramona is. We all are. But the biggest thing is people who are struggling are directed to us. And Kathy, gets them connected to other resources. She has great relationships with the sober living facilities in the area, and she's really the conduit to that, for those. And it's a funny thing. You can chicken and egg God to death. We get Kathy, and we're getting a lot more people being referred to us, or maybe it happened the other way. I don't know, but
yeah. Let's talk a little bit now about ministry to the homeless. You do have an initiative that's started this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, warming at the heart. And again, this goes back to Kathy. We should have brought Kathy along. So the homeless, those who I should say are guests of the St. John's Ministry shelters, there are two seasonal shelters, the men and the women, and they run basically November 1st through April 30th. And what happens is when those shelters are in operation, one, as I mentioned, they're seasonal. Two, they're basically overnight only. They can get in at 5 p.m. They have to be out at 8 a.m. During the week, St. John's Micah Center is a place for them to go. On Saturdays, they can ride the transit, or they can go to the downtown library. That used to be the case on Sunday for the library. I think it was January 23 when the library no longer was open on Sunday. So another church in town has them in the morning, from the shelters, and then 12:30ish, 1 o'clock, there's really no place to drop them anymore. So in February, St. John's Ministries tried something at the Micah, and we were signed up. Green Bay Community Church was signed up to provide that time until the shelters open. There's some problems with that, so that didn't continue. And it was at that time Kathy said, well, hey, can we do that? And Kathy and I have something dangerous in common. We are ready, shoot, aim, which is why this is the anchor, this is the rock right here. It's like, and and I said, well, no, we can't do it this coming Sunday because we're just not built for that. But that did lead to a conversation with St. John's Ministries executive director, and said, well, okay, what if we plan being the place where the church that's busing them right now can bring them to our place, and we'll work with other churches. So we thought about what all the needs were. We just wrote all of this down and about how many churches it would take. And my initial thought was 4 to 6 churches, bare minimum. And what that means is they bring a team of a half a dozen or more volunteers, and they serve those guests when they're brought here. And that with our, here being our church, Samaritan's Heart, and then our church van will take them to the shelters in time for dinner on Sunday evening. And God made me sweat. I mean, it's like, we need more churches. And suddenly he opened, I don't know what he was looking for from me, but he was looking for something. And we now have 8 other churches. So all 26 Sundays are filled. But we are, a couple of things that we're, they're Mike, is we can continue to use what we call support staff. We're going to have at least 50, 60 people in the church. There's going to need to be monitoring and other things. So we continue to, we can certainly use additional volunteers and that sort of thing. But it is just amazing the way God has put this on the heart of other churches. And a dear pastor friend, James Koshin, his church, what he speaks to is kingdom and not castles. And it was an incredible blessing the way, and again, including Green Bay Community Church, people were willing to leave their castles, and all of them got a lot bigger and prettier castle than we do. And, to leave those and understand this is about kingdom work. And that's just a tremendous blessing.
That concept that church is not somewhere, a building you go to, it's the people going out into the community. Yes. Is that what you're kind of alluding to or getting at?
Absolutely. And this is not original, but I love it, and it just so drives my heart. Jesus did ministry 3 miles an hour, one at a time. He didn't drive anywhere. It was 3 miles an hour. And yes, of course, there's a Sermon on the Mount. There's all those, there are those moments where he serves the masses, feeds the thousands. But most of the stories of Jesus that direct us are the woman at the well, the adulteress, the individual that he healed. And that is what God has put on our heart. And that's what we pray happens even on Sunday afternoons when you have, and we're really stressing the most important thing, Mike, that the participating churches can provide is witness, being with them. Just talk to them. What kind of programs are we going to do? What activities are we going to do? Sit down and talk to that person. Bring a cribbage board. That'll work. That's what's critical, that one person at a time.
Yeah. For someone out there who maybe is a little naive and would say, well, wait a minute, Green Bay, there's a homeless problem in Green Bay? That's for the bigger cities. Speak to that a little bit.
It is, it has become a class, unfortunately. And we recently saw a movie about it called The Invisible Class. And that's, quite frankly, and I don't want to step in any toes here, but it has unfortunately become a mindset of some that want them to be invisible. We just don't want to be reminded that they're out there. And the numbers are growing, we can tell you that. And we have identified, and help me on this because I do forget. So recovery is huge. Those who are in addiction recovery often end up homeless because they have been incarcerated, and it's very difficult for them to find a job. Mental health issues are also a big driver. Hey, when I was a talk show host, I had this all figured out. But that's the best job in the world. You can sit in a studio and have all the right answers, and you're never tested on any of them. It's a beautiful thing. And of course, I say that sarcastically. But I was one of those, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There are those who we say this, and Ramona talked to one. How many years?
That probably announced that he had been homeless 29 years.
And this is and
that was his choice.
And Mike, they're there. They're there. So you've got them, and then finally those who've just recently fallen through the cracks. They're $1,000 car repair bill away from homelessness, or a missed rent, whatever. And yeah, they're or they may still be working, but it's just they're not making the ends meet. But in terms of and all of those things, all of those elements are growing the problem. And it is growing. And you'll hear numbers of this many and that many. And that tends to be those that are sheltered. I could drive you around. And in fact, I could get someone to drive you around that would do it even better. There are what I call duck blinds all over the city of Green Bay. You would be shocked how many unhoused shelters, duck blinds that you drive by in a given day, under viaducts, in roundabouts, if they have enough vegetation during the summer months. And I won't tell you where they are, but they're there, okay? I had someone from St. John's Ministries do that. I couldn't believe it. And now in the immediate area of the church, it is a growing epidemic, and the invisible are becoming less invisible and more visible. And I think there's an upside to that if it helps us address the problem.
Someone out there who says, well, what can I do to help? Because you have this ministry going, and is it plugging into a ministry like that? What would you recommend for someone who just says, there's a homeless problem, what can I do?
I would, a couple of things. You kind of open the door here for a shameless plug. We can always, as I said, we can use volunteers for this effort, Warming at the Heart, Sunday afternoons. St. John's shelters are the shelters of last resort, and they're looking for groups and churches to serve meals. They'll take volunteers. There are opportunities. I would certainly suggest reaching out to them. Financial assistance for those shelters, absolutely. We all run out of money. Let's just be honest, and financially supporting St. John's Ministry shelters, absolutely. Most importantly, I guess two things: educate yourself on the nature of the problem, the way we just discussed it, Mike, the dynamic. Well, they just got to get a job. We just recently had someone say that. It's like, boy, gosh, I wish it were that easy. And for many of them, it's not. And then find opportunities, and this goes back to the volunteering. There's opportunities for witness, to volunteer, to just be with them. It changes everything to know that even if you'll just love them for an hour. So those are a couple of ways.
Sure. Ramona, for you, Jerry had mentioned sometimes you have to call time out and say, hey, we have to figure out how to do this. Or what's the challenge for you in trying to navigate, how to minister?
Yeah, he's definitely the biggest one, because he's ready to just jump in and do it. As we do things, we learn more on what really is good and what to do. But probably the biggest thing is, I feel, is we need relationship, and try to talk to people and find out where they're at. What do they really need? I'm going to tell the cart story. We had someone who was staying in the park, and he was using a walker, with a wheeled walker, to basically carry his stuff, and it broke.
Because it's not made for that. It's made to help him walk.
Right. And so Jerry's like, we got to get a walker. And I'm like, he doesn't need a walker. He needs something to carry his stuff. So sometimes it's just those little things, is really seeing what somebody needs, and I've heard a lot of this not blaming anybody, but too often people that was a problem a couple years with when they were staying in St. John's Park, is people would just drop off food.
Yeah.
They don't need all of that, and all it did was cause problems. Talk to somebody and see what they really need. Now, I confess, we don't give money. People ask for money, we don't give them money, because we don't know what they're going to use it for. What do you need? If you really need gas for your car,
we'll do that. We'll find resources.
We find resources, whatever. That's the biggest thing is, they're all people. We're all people. And what you would do for a friend, you can do for someone who doesn't have anything too. Okay,
she let me off the hook there. I'm going to be much harder on myself, because you buried the lead there. You got it. You have to tell the whole cart story.
Oh, the heart.
So my mom passed a couple years ago, and we have a walker in our basement, and I was going to run home and get him that walker. So he doesn't need a walker. He can walk. He needs something, and I was just adamant. So I ran to the thrift stores, and God all of a sudden just kind of grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and said, your wife is right. Just settle down and come up with another plan. So I was going to go on my personal Facebook page, and then God pinged me again And Mike, until a week ago, I had never used Facebook Marketplace in my whole life. I had never touched it. And I'm on Facebook I typed in push cart. I found 2. And it's like, okay, we only need 1, and now I found 2. One of them was like 3 blocks north of the church, like right there. And so we got both of them, gave the gentleman one, and now we have one because someone else absolutely is going to need one. So that's where, here's how I think of her. Okay, so if you ever saw the NFL Films video where Mike Holmgren is telling Brett Favre, "You okay? You all right? You're throwing a lot of rocket balls. Okay, you're good. Okay, I'm calm. You're calm. No more rocket balls. Okay." There's times where she's got to say, "No more rocket balls."
Oh, that's funny. You guys, I mean, you're tackling difficult issues. You talk about homelessness. You talk about addiction. About recovering from people who have been incarcerated. I mean, these are not easy issues, to tackle. When you look at the scope of that, I mean, how do you approach it? Because obviously these, there's not simple, easy solutions where you snap your fingers and it's all gonna go away. So how do you approach these issues on a personal level?
Seek direction from God. How much do you want to accomplish through us in this person's life? And we've been joking about it, but that really is the challenge for me. Is I want to have an S on my chest, and that's pride. That's not Jesus. That's pride where I can fix. No, I can't. Only and seriously, that is where she comes in, and others in the church come in. Here's how much we can. That God is going to allow us to do. Here's how much God wants to do through us in that person's life. And that can be extremely difficult because there are times where God's like, "You've done as much as I want you to do here." Yeah, but they're still in addiction. They're, we have had where we've helped someone. They were on the verge of getting their children back, and they slip and are arrested and are in prison. Okay, we stay in touch. And when I can, I will visit that person. It's the 2 sides of the coin, Mike. Don't try to do more than God wants you to do, but also don't abandon them. Don't give up on them. And that's, you truly have to listen, and I want you to weigh in on this. You truly have to listen to God, but you also need someone who pulls you back emotionally, because I'll just get way too sucked in.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just really, it's a very fine balance to do that. And I guess that's where I try to focus on. A big part of it is we really can't do a whole lot more than they are willing to do for themselves. We can help them do it, but we can't do it for them. We've had some that just want us to do everything for them, and we just can't. Some of the things, whoever you're applying to is not going to listen to me. They need you. So that is probably the biggest part of it, is just helping people. Sometimes maybe give them the confidence that they can do it, but just to be there as support and say, well, this is what you need, but you do have to do it. You have to take that next step, and I've seen that.
Flip side of that is people who want to do it themselves, who just, no, I can do this. That's like the, there's that, and then there's, no, but that's something we can help you with. Yes, please stay connected with us. But no, I've slipped back into addiction, and I'm ashamed that I can't show up at church. I can't call the pastor. I can't do that. Getting past that guilt and shame. It's like, Jesus knew you were going to mess up. It's okay. So it's okay with us.
Mm-hmm. If you had to share a prayer request, what would you say for anybody listening out there? What can they be praying for you about?
Ooh.
You want to go first? I can answer that one.
You have lots of them.
Yeah, well, it is wisdom and discernment in, basically the serenity prayer. Know what I can do and change the things God gives me the ability to change, and not try to fix the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, because that is probably totally transparent here. That is my greatest weakness, is understanding God's not calling me to do that. God's not calling me to do as much of that. So, really, truly wisdom, discernment, and protect our hearts, because our hearts get broken and people don't mean to break them. I mean, someone that we have loved and nurtured, and they end up in prison, they get out of prison, and you're ready to help them walk that walk, and they slip right back into addiction. And you can't not get emotionally invested. Like, you love them, you love them, but understand that you can't die with them when they slip. You just have to be there. So protecting our hearts and wisdom and discernment.
Yeah, we ask for that constantly. We have a wonderful prayer team that we reach out to every week, and that is the biggest thing, is the wisdom, the clarity, discernment, so that we know. Because sometimes you can't tell, is it, as Jerry says, is it Jerry or is it Jesus?
Yeah.
When sometimes it's cloudy as to really what our next step is. So just help us stay on the path. He puts us back on the path.
Yeah. One question I always love to ask people is to share a life lesson. And now, before I let you respond, I just want to give you a shout out, Jerry, because I think if you go on Jerry's Facebook page, I think he's giving life lessons every week. They're little snippets, maybe they're 2.5 minute mini sermons, but I think you're living proof. You don't have to have 30 minutes to expound on a topic. You can do something that applies to your life, something you've learned, something God's showing you. So I love that. What you're doing there. That's really awesome. If you had to pick one thing right now, and that God has maybe put on your heart that you wanted to share, some lesson you've learned along the way, what would it be?
Boy, I would say recognize, and I'm speaking of me, but I really don't think this is just me. Recognize we judge way more often than we realize, in big ways and in small. And one example, you can decide you know everything about the guy who cut you off in traffic. You have no idea what he or she, what's going on. It was years ago, I heard it on Christian radio. Don't judge my story based on the chapter you walk in on. I don't care how informed you think your judgment is. Jesus warned us about that, and that we can convince ourselves, no, we don't judge, we love and accept them all. Anytime you make presuppositions, anytime you make an estimation, those are just fancy words for judging. And recognize that, yes, you're judged more often than you should be, and recognize that there are things you do, things you say, things you think that judge people and inadvertently marginalize them before you get to know them.
That's good. Ramona, how about you?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Boy, that is just really something. I guess just really, I'm not really sure how to say. Just I really have to trust. We really just have. I need to really trust God, and just sometimes you something happens and you're just not quite understanding it or whatever, and that is the biggest thing, is that we fail a lot. We are not flawless. And God doesn't expect us to be. He knows exactly what we are. So struggle to surrender it. So we need to surrender it.
That's good. Is there anything else you want to add to our conversation? It's something I haven't asked, or anything that's not been said that you want to talk about?
I would just double down on what you asked earlier, that you never fail when you follow God's will. So don't be afraid to fail in the horizontal. Don't be afraid to fail in earthly terms. If you in your heart know that you are doing what God has called you to do, because you just don't know, the curtain doesn't get pulled back on the other side of heaven. You don't know why he put you through that. But as Paul Tripp likes to say, it's a tool of grace that he's using to shape and form you. Don't worry about falling on your face here on earth as long as you're following him.
Well, Jerry, Ramona, I want to thank you for this time. I love your hearts. I can hear the words that will one day be spoken to you. Well done, good and faithful servants. Not that you're doing that for that reward, but I think what you're doing is making a difference and an impact, and just want to thank you for your faithfulness.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike, for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, it's one person at a time.
Yep.
Yeah. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, my name is Kathy Aretto, and I have been attending here for probably like a year and a couple of weeks. I would have been attending here for 3 years, but I was a little bit disobedient to God when we moved here. My family and I moved to the neighborhood in 2021, and I was blessed to be on the neighborhood association board, where I met Pastor Jerry, and I am so not proud of this. When we met, I knew that name, and I knew that name. I just didn't know where I knew it from. And then I realized I knew it from the radio, and that he was the guy that railed against loudly and proudly everything that I believed in, and that he was just a very unloving person. At least in my opinion, I thought so. And so I made it my personal mission to make sure that he was not allowed to be on our neighborhood association, because I didn't want him coming in with his great white way and saving all of us in the neighborhood. We didn't need that. We didn't need to be saved from him. And we didn't need Bible thumpers thumping on our doors. And I made it really hard for him. But he persevered and continued through and kept coming to the meetings and kept getting on the board and kept doing the things. Winter came, and I don't know why, except for God. I hadn't been to church since before the pandemic, and I couldn't find a church that was right for me and my family, and my husband felt the same way. And pardon me. That winter, God spoke to my heart. He said, "You owe that man an apology." And I thought, I don't want to do that. So I did this for a little while, you know how one does. And when I saw him in the spring, I asked if I could speak to him after our board meeting, and he said yes. And I apologized. I apologized for the way that I behaved. I apologized for the heart posture that I held, and I apologized for making his life harder, because he didn't deserve that, no matter who he is or is not. And that's when he said words that I hope will forever be etched in my heart. He said to me, that's okay. You didn't know who I am. You only knew who I used to be. Now, if you know me, you know that is my life's work, is to take away the stigma of who people used to be and allow them the freedom of who they are today, whoever God has changed them to be today. Because I'm a person in long-term recovery, and who I was 25 years ago is not who I am today. And he didn't mean it in a way that would be like a gut punch, but God knew what he would mean and what I would take that to mean. And I went home and I wept and I cried, and I was so grateful for his forgiveness. He said it wasn't even an issue. And my husband and I started talking about maybe we should start just checking it out. I mean, we'll just go. I mean, maybe we don't get involved, but we just go. So we just showed up. And it's in the morning. It's 9 o'clock in the actual morning, you guys. Oh, that's so early for me. And I will gladly get up every morning at 9 o'clock to be here for 9 o'clock, to be here for 7 o'clock if that's when I have to be here. This church was an oasis and still is. It's an oasis to my heart, put here by God, to renew my faith in who the church is, to renew my faith in who God's people are. Pastor Jerry and Ramona did that. I mean, I know it was God, but they listened and they did that, and they loved me and they loved my family and continue to. I don't know why. I certainly didn't deserve that. But God, I don't know, in the last year, this church has grown exponentially. I think we had over 40 today. Over 40. Like, that's crazy. We're running 20 and 30 on a Wednesday. That's crazy. He gave me a place to serve. He let me have an office here so I could have a recovery hub and reach the community and bring unity to the recovery community. They did that, this church. And from what he says, they can do that because of what you did. And I am so grateful. I'm grateful to them for saying yes. And I'm grateful for you to saying yes. And I'm grateful for God speaking and for people listening.
Hi, I met Pastor Jerry on March 26th of 2022. I remember asking him to pray for me as I was going through a lot of pain. Not just real hurtful pain, but spiritual pain as well. I never stopped loving God, but my belief in my faith was struggling. When I met Pastor Jerry, he invited me to come to the Good Samaritan Church. I struggled, but I eventually started coming to the church on a regular basis. Even though the enemy, which is Satan, was trying his best to stop me, I continued and I moved forward and my faith grew. I was baptized in this church because I started believing in God again. And Pastor Jerry was the one that brought me here to this church. My daughter introduced me to this church, but it was because of his faith in God and in everybody else. I came to this church. I was struggling to know God, and I know as always He is with me. I've learned so much, and I owe that to Pastor Jerry. All that is from one prayer request. I believe in this church, and I believe in Pastor Jerry. Thank you.
I've been coming to this church a little bit over a year, right around there, which is kind of odd and in a good way. I used to be a member of this church before, when it was Crossroads, and after that church closed, I jumped around from church to church, but I didn't feel comfortable in any of the churches. I moved out of Green Bay for a while, and I went to a church up north, and I became good friends with a pastor. And I was there for a while, but something kept calling me back to Green Bay. So I packed my things and I came back to Green Bay. And I don't believe that things happen by coincidence. I believe that there's a reason why everything happens. And one Friday, I was playing with my grandkids in my backyard, and my grandson decided that he wanted to go to the park at the last minute. So I tried to convince him that we were doing fine playing there, but he was saying, "No, Papa, I want to go to the park." So finally I said, "Okay, let's go to the park." So we went to the park, and there was a picnic going on there. And I started talking to the people, and I got, we got some food, and finally asked them, "Well, who's sponsoring this picnic?" And they said, "Our church." I said, "Okay, well, where is your church located?" And they pointed at this building, and I thought, well, that's the old Crossroads building. So I started telling them how I used to be a member at the previous church that was here, and then I met the pastor, and they invited me to come to church, and I came, and it was, the minute that I walked through the door, it felt like this big weight had been lifted off of my shoulders, and I felt like I was back home again. This is where everything started for me, my recovery, and where I actually came to know God, because I knew of God, but I really didn't know God until I started coming to church. So for me, it was like coming home. I felt comfortable. Like I said, I tried going to different other churches, and they were okay, they were friendly, but it just didn't feel like I was home. It just didn't feel like I was meant to be there. But like I said, as soon as I walked through the door, I felt like I was home again. So God used my grandson to bring me home, and this was like a going full circle. This is where I started, and then I left, and then he brought me back again, and so here I am. I'm just trying to see trying to keep my ears and eyes open to see what it is that God wants me to do, because I was told before I left the other church up north that he wasn't, the pastor told me that God is not done with me yet. He said, keep your ears and eyes open. He said, because something tells me that he's not done with you yet. So I look forward to see what it is that he has in mind for me. And just real quick, I'm glad that I get to see all the changes that are going on in this church, because that's what this church was designed for. It was supposed to be an inner city church to serve the community, where people can go as they are. Whether they're wearing a three-piece suit or worn out pair of jeans and a stained T-shirt. Everybody's welcome, and that's what this building was designed for. And again, I'm happy to see and be a part of the changes that are taking place in this church, and see that the job that God started a long time ago, He never forgot about it, and He wasn't Crossroads the one that was going to get everything done. They started the job, and now Pastor Jerry and the rest of the church are here, and so again, I'm just glad to see that this building is finally doing what it was meant to do from the beginning, and everything else will live in God's hands.